you. Thank you, Ross. And thank you guys, and welcome and good morning for the West Coasters. I hope your eyes are getting a little wide open now. So first of all, yes, like Ross said, it is a very interesting time for us in automotive, whether it's autonomous vehicles or whether it's how are we modifying or bettering the customer experience, which is paramount for us especially because we recognize there's so much room yet between expectations, customers really thinking they're having a good experience, and what I think our dealer bodies, regardless of the brand, have been working on for decades. They think they're getting better. I don't think consumers think they're getting better, and so we're trying to continue to bridge that because we do think there's a lot of opportunity there. So before I get started, I'm going to run just a quick video that we used at a dealer meeting about 2 years ago when we first started seeding this idea of shopper's assurance for Hyundai and our mission to really make the customer experience better. So let me play that for you real quick.
Gentlemen, this country of ours is unique in one very important respect. We're the only nation in the world where practically every family has its own transportation system. And every car and truck you see on the road was put there by some salesman. I can make you a nice selling job. Would you marry me?
Of course, darling. I told you as soon as you found a job you were happy with, I would.
Nothing like marrying a car dealer. Modern shopping is changing, and we recognize, like we said, that video had probably every single thing you could probably put into a video that kind of tipped our hat to our dealers to say that everything's changing around us. We can't just stand still and continue to just worry about marketing the car. We really believe that you got to build the brand bigger than just merchandising a car. You've got to be wide or in your view, and so making sure we're identifying whether it's Carvana, BP, all of those businesses around us, CarMax, they're improving, so we wanted to improve with it. So it's not just the competition that's coming, but it's the technology too that we're getting used to every day, and you use the word omni-channel all the time, whether it's your phone and your tablet, whether it's the dealer website, all those things working together more to really take the friction out of whether it's research or all the way into the physical store and what you're doing at the physical store to really make sure a customer's time is appreciated. Because like we said, they expect it to be frictionless because today it's only 2 clicks on Amazon and that box arrives. And so consumers are getting more used to that every day. They're also getting more efficient, and being efficient is important, and transparent. Those are our key tenets when we were looking at our process that we recognized that consumers were getting used to, but we weren't delivering for them at the expectations that they were expecting. And we also went back and said, look, when we were doing some research and said, look, like we said, that video, it's already moving. And it's moving in these 3 pillars. First of all, saving time. And like you said, Amazon is really teaching that to us more than ever before. I don't know how many of you have spouses that like to be out shopping. Mine likes to click and buy now. I don't know, that's dangerous sometimes. But the point is, it is more fortunate because it's saving time all the time. And then transparent buying process, right? Knowing what those prices are up front, understanding what the full terms are. Best Buy, Home Depot, obvious ones, but do you notice there's no car brands in here yet, right? And that's what we noticed. And then experience with technology. Again, mobile capabilities, you know, Rocket Mortgage, you see that on TV a lot. Them leaning in on something as cumbersome that we're used to as mortgages, and all of a sudden they're thinking 3 clicks and you have your mortgage. And so the consumers are getting trained with these 3 pillars like ever before. So that's really what we think is the new currency in regards to making sure your customer experiences are better and they come to you on a more organic basis every day. I like to use the Starbucks example too. How many of you now are ordering your Starbucks stuff ahead of time? Okay, do you see what I mean? It's that, the first time I saw that, I have to admit, you know, about 1.5 years ago, I'm like, oh really? You can't? And then after you do it, I get it. So it's happening all over the place. And so that's what we're really focused at Hyundai. So auto, in particular now, like the video said, is starting to move fast too. Whether there's millennials that are expecting it today, or there's other companies out there like CarMax. I know you're watching CarMax commercials. Watch car commercials a lot myself. But you'll notice that what they're doing every day is they're not selling cars. They're only selling processes, which is new and unique, we think, in the industry. So we want to follow that at Hyundai as a best practice. Something else I think that we set this up, which is automotive. You know, I was the general manager of a Chrysler dealer back in dates me, about 91, 92, when internet was just starting to really hit automotive. And I remember the day of saying, well, we just had to have the newspaper person rep come in. We just filled out what the ad would be. We'd send that ad in, and you'd wait for Saturday for the traffic to come in. This is before a website. This is before all that other stuff. And now you can see today, it's a very complicated path between research all the way to when you purchase. And so we've got to recognize this too in this multi-channel, very much more confusing world that we live in today as auto marketers especially. We also looked at our own customers and said to our own customers, and we interview every single one of them and say, how did you really find out about us? What were the research types that you used? And we recognize with the Hyundai customer especially, they're using about an average of 6.1 research points. And you'll notice through this list, there's a ton of people that you know, platforms that you know, influencer platforms that you know. And so we keep a focus on that and understand and think about that when we go to market to compete. But at Hyundai, we also know there's some really big data points that we have to acknowledge. You know, going back to that joke about just putting an ad in the newspaper and waiting for the customers to come in. The point is, at Hyundai, we can't afford to do that today. And this is why, because we recognize that our average customer that's shopping us today is shopping for brands. And I really emphasize this to our retailers a lot because sometimes our retailers have a tendency to think, well, that lead comes in, I'm only competing with the Hyundai dealer across town. Well, we're not. We're competing with 4 other brands. And why does that become very important? Because the other statistic says it loud and clear. They're not shopping physical showrooms like they used to. They're only shopping for us 1.6 to 2 dealers before they buy. So again, it's one of those things where the competition and the competitiveness has to happen online. And we know more than ever before, we have to have a value proposition that says, why don't you come visit us? Because the consumers are telling us they don't want to visit a lot of stores. You know, I kid our dealer council a few months ago. I know we want every customer to come into the store and say, hey, so what kind of cars do you have here at Hyundai? And do you have any incentives or rebate? Okay, that customer doesn't come in anymore, by the way, right? They already know coming in how much they should buy. They've checked in with TrueCar. They really have an idea what an average transaction price is. So we just have to acknowledge how those marketing conditions have changed the buying experience, and we have to meet it head on. We also recognize, too, and I don't know if you've seen it on your desks, on one of the pamphlets, there's a little excerpt from AutoTrader and the study they just did last week and announced at NADA. And it really coincides a little bit around this, too, which is consumers are spending a lot of time doing research, number one, up front. And the point is like I was talking a few minutes ago on that slide with all those touch points. Yeah, all those touch points are taking time. But the point is the consumers are all doing it, again, a lot of times before the dealership. But here's the other part. When they do get to the dealership, it's still taking too much time. The average consumer today, whether it's 4 hours, our studies show it's taking an average Hyundai customer about 5.5 hours at our stores. Best in class, we recognize, is 4 hours from some brands. So we know that we can really help here quite a bit because consumers think it's taking too long, and the fact is, it really is, especially when they physically arrive at a store. And you could see in that old data, if they're only visiting 1.52 stores, you've got that opportunity, and you've got to cash in on it at that point. So that's what we wanted to do at Hyundai. We wanted to make sure we weren't just focusing on marketing cars. We wanted to make sure we had something to market around the customer experience and really lean in a program that our dealers could get their arms around and we could both come to the market hand in hand. So we're introducing to the market something we like to call shopper assurance. Let me give you a little idea of what some of the consumers said about shopper's assurance when we were going through our first pilot markets. We interviewed some customers, and let me just give you a little clip on what some of them had to say.
I've never really liked the car buying process.
The new car is exciting, but like the process is just like daunting to me.
100% of the people have gotten information off the internet. We have a customer that comes in today that's more prepared to transact than ever before.
I buy more stuff on Amazon because they just make it really, really easy. So how can we incorporate that into our business and make it easier for the consumer to transact with us versus putting up roadblocks?
Tech at the age, it's like everything, you're bringing everything to you. And so I think this also like fits with that mold right now.
I think it's gotta be presented to the consumer that is for you just to get comfortable with the vehicle and the personnel that we're sending from our dealership.
You can do all that paperwork on your laptop at your convenience and then just like submit it online. That'd be so much easier. For me, I'd say it's a game changer.
I don't think that I would return a car, but if I needed to, like it's nice that you have this option. And I think that kind of shows they're really thinking about you and they're being considerate that this is a good choice.
When I buy shoes on Zappos, they make it very, very easy to return items. It's the right thing to do. I think it's a nice peace of mind for the consumer. Every other industry is structured like this with upfront and transparent pricing. The car industry has to go that way. It's just going to be a standard across all dealerships if they want to compete.
Having it all based around my busy life right now, that is a game changer.
They're thinking like, what would my customer want? How can we make it easier for them?
We've been growing steadily since we've done this. It is the right thing for us to do, and in 5 years, it might be that you have to have these things if you want to continue to do business on the retail side in the United States.
So Andrew DeFeo, who's up there, is one of our lead horses. He's chairman of our whole dealer council, and he said it best, right? If we feel at Hyundai, if we don't get into this now, you're going to have to eventually to stay competitive. And so why not take the advantage? Why not take that place where we were talking about there, that 84% of customers today, what we think is most impressive of that is we have consumers now that are telling us, and I get into this data slide in a minute, they pick an experience over a make or a model. Let me repeat that. Experience over a make or a model. So while most of us brands are out there shooting it out for $189 a month, we need to pivot, and we need to be leaning in on a better experience, not just a lower price or a feature that one company has today and another product doesn't have tomorrow. But you know how features are in cars today. What one has today, the other one has in 6 months. And so we want to get out of the feature war, and we definitely want to get out of the price war all the time. And so this is one of our weapons in making sure we're competing against our competitors better every day. So that's really what Shopper's Assurance here is. We like to say it's the best way to buy a new car today in the industry. Because on the left it says, obviously, customers want to feel more confident today when they go through the process. They want to be more respected. They want to feel more in control and at ease. And today the average transaction price for a car is over $30,000. So for that amount of money, you definitely have to have those 4 pillars, we think, or you're not even in the game. And so on the right is really what Shopper's Assurance brings to consumers today. So let me break those 4 pillars down a little bit. In that video, we did a little ahead and we've reversed the order a little bit. But the point is those 4 pillars are the pillars of Shopper's Assurance. First of all, the transparent pricing. This is one of my favorites only because, again, going back to the joke I made a minute ago, where our dealers are hoping that customer that comes in to say, hey, I don't have really any idea what the price is. Do you want to? They kind of start like, no. The point is that consumer doesn't come in anymore today. They look at TrueCar. They go to Edmunds. They see that transaction price online. And I like to tell the story about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, if any remember Automotive, Delixes of the world. They made a living on going on the internet and having those little buttons everywhere that said, get a quote. And the reason that was so popular is because the only thing that was available 15 years ago, invoice and MSRP. But between MSRP and invoice, in some cars there can be $3,000, $4,000 difference. And so a consumer was hitting that get a quote button like crazy because all they were trying to do was get some idea where in between those goalposts was a fair price. Well, then TrueCar comes running into town about, 5 years ago. Edmunds right behind him saying, we have a better idea. Why don't we just post the transaction price? So they go into dealer DMSs. They find other data sources to start populating where in between those 2 goalposts you need to be. Thus, the transaction price was born. Why you have whole websites and IPOs like Car Gurus just last year, a whole IPO, and their whole business model is built on one thing, a transaction price disclosure. So it's become a really big deal. So we thought at Hyundai, wait a minute, why are we just going to put on our dealer websites when a customer looks at a piece of inventory or goes to a VDP, why are we just going to say MSRP and call me? That's not good. I used to kid our dealers, if you're a Bugatti dealer in Newport Beach and you're only one with a baby blue Bugatti, you can put call me. But you've got 18 white Elantras on your lot. You can't say call me. That doesn't work. And so we've been working and pushing, convincing our retailers over time that the best thing to do is why don't we put the transaction price on our websites? So when the consumer comes to us, even if they double check and go back to TrueCar and come back, all of a sudden there's something more special about the Hyundai because we're already synced up. There isn't the surprise that says, okay, I'm going to come into the dealership with this price in my pocket, and I'm going to sit with that salesperson, and if he gives me a full MSRP deal, I'm going to put that piece of paper out there and say, nope, that's the price you're supposed to give me. Okay, we don't want that anymore. We want that alignment right up front, right when they're looking at all the inventory on the dealer's website. So that's our transparent pricing pillar. And all we basically tell our dealers today is, this isn't one price. We're not saying it's one price. What we're saying is it's still up to you, but we want more than MSRP and call me. We want MSRP plus any consumer rebates, any dealer discount that the dealer wants to put up, and we recommend to our dealers, You know what your average transaction prices are. It's the price you gave to the Costco for the Costco program. So just put it on your website. And so that's what we're encouraging our dealers to do every day as they move forward with integrating Shoppers Assurance. Streamline purchase. Again, like in the video, it showed people want to spend a little more time at home up front. They want to understand things like their credit. They want to have the opportunity in private to put their credit information in themselves. Then they want to have the ability to be able to say what kind of credit they have, and they want to be able to transfer that over to understand how that affects their payment structures. They want to understand the difference between a retail contract. They want to understand what a lease payment is. They want to be able to go back and forth between that and really get a good idea of how those numbers work before they're looking at the F&I manager in the F&I booth. So that's the streamlined purchase process. So part of Shoppers Assurance is all of our retailers that are part of Shoppers Assurance have that technology layer on their websites to be able to do all of those pieces. And so that's streamlined purchase because we recognize at the end of the day, when the consumer's coming in, we're not just saying we want to reduce that 5 hours down to 3. We do obviously want to go from 5 to something like 4, but we want them to do 2 things. We want them to lessen up on the negotiation part, and we want them to heavy up on merchandising the test drive better, and we want more time in delivery. We want them to fall in love with the car more on both ends. That's the point. And so we're trying to get our retailers, because sometimes if you're an auto retailer yourself, I was an auto retailer at the very beginning, and part of the piece of our skill set is the negotiation. That's what we do. That's why we're car dealers. And so taking what they think is a core competency out of the mix is not easy at first, but now studies show that the more the consumer does know up front, and the more you do treat them with respect, and you highlight the car, and you give them that time to think about all those options, the better they really are, and the more money they actually spend with you. I mean, studies show this a lot. If you're in the F&I office and you've just been through 4 hours and you're like going into the F&I office and you're thinking, I'm just going to get my keys, and then the guy's like, I got 7 more things to sell you. You're like, oh, really? How much are you buying? Not a lot. But if up front you already knew that insurance was costing you this, you could buy floor mats, you could do all these other things, and you know it up front, guess what? You end up buying more. And so we're getting our retailers through this piece, which is you really do, when you have a more streamlined process, don't be afraid, but you really are, the customer's going to spend more money with you, and you're going to make more money in the end, and everyone wins. So that's our streamlined purchase. Flexible test drives. Now, we like to market the remote test drive because everything's but remote today, and it's the thing to do. And when we went through studies, we recognized that consumers are saying that's a really important thing. We like that you're doing that. We're finding 97% want to come to the dealership anyway. They want to drive more than one car. But the point is, just offering it to the consumer, again, opens up your brand, and they're like, wow, what a nice open brand. And so we're offering flexible test drives. We have a really great app. It's like Uber, for example. We call it Hyundai Drive, and it operates just like Uber. You click on it. You choose salespeople. You find the salesperson you want to deliver it to you. The map opens up. We ask you, do you want a cup of coffee, what radio stations you want, and you see the salesperson bringing it to your home or your office, Starbucks. So we've tried to duplicate that similar experience. So the consumers that are using that really love it. But what we're finding is not a lot want to use it because at the end of the day, like I said, they want to come into the store, and if they know that the environment is safer, they know we're doing these other things, they end up wanting to come in. And then our fourth pillar is our satisfaction guarantee, where we recognize, again, auto is a very expensive purchase. And isn't it odd it's the only purchase that we're like, okay, once you sign, you're done. We can't really have that in automotive. And so we're really working at Hyundai to make sure that becomes the fourth pillar. So at the end of the day, we're so confident you're going to like our car, bring it back in 3 days or 300 miles if you don't like it. So that's really our setup for Shoppers Assurance and what we think are the 4 pillars that take out friction and add in more love throughout the experience. So we started with a pilot program back last June. We went into 4 major markets, Orlando, Miami, Dallas, and Houston. We've had thousands and thousands of people through the process, about 75,000 sales through that process so far. And we went back to our customers that bought and said, what did you think? Well, the numbers speak for themselves. My favorite is 94% loved or liked the car buying process. Well, if you look at the Auto Trader study, and I don't know if it's on the particular brochure, but 70% of people today don't like the car buying experience after they've had one. So when we can hit 94 like it after they've come through our process, we think we're really doing a good job. And like I was saying before too, statistics in there that show consumers are picking a process over a make or a model. Now that's conquest content if I ever saw it. We then, after going through last year in those 4 markets, we announced in Chicago a few months ago that we're launching nationally across the country. And the beautiful part is, within just a month, we've had almost 500 of our 800 dealers sign up, and we're getting 10 and 20 a week signing up as we're coming across, having conversations with them in a joint effort to say, look at these numbers, I think we should do this together as a team, and we're getting more and more of our dealers every day buying in to this more modern retail process. And then we are gone all crazy and starting to put all that kind of marketing material all the way down, even to dealer websites, all the way down to each particular VDP in this case. And then let me just give you one final before we're done here. And this is just a spot we just cut the other day to run at Tier 2 because some of our markets now, the dealers are taking this content. And like we said earlier, I've been trying to convince them at Tier 2, we can be pounding on a 189 message, or what's worse is we can put like five incentives in a 30-second spot, or we can run a spot like this.
Your local Hyundai dealers are proud to introduce Shopper Assurance. With test drives, they can come to you. Transparent pricing, streamlined purchasing with online paperwork, and a 3-day money-back guarantee. It's a new way to buy a car that gives people more control and peace of mind. After all, owning a Hyundai is easy. Buying one should be easy too. Right now, you can get a Sonata for just one.
Okay, I cut out the 169. That was my give to them, but but that's the point. We're working with them every day to make sure we understand that there's that balance, right? And we think having a better experience is definitely a good brand balancer for us, and that's why we did Shopper's Assurance. So thank you guys for the time, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Great. Hello, is this on? Yes, great. Thank you, Dean. That was fantastic. I believe we're going to cut to Q&A. I think Tanya wanted to start with the first question, though.
I do. I'm curious how your dealers are reacting so far to the Shopper Assurance program.
Yes, I always kidded because I pitched this 2 years ago at the Dealer Council, and some of the first words were like, Dean, why don't you stick to marketing the car and we'll stick to the experience? And I said, well, no, we're all going to stick to both now. And so we've had to obviously lean in at first because, like I said, the heart of what a dealer thinks their core competency a lot of times is the negotiation part. They think that, unfortunately, the friction parts are their competencies. And so we've had to walk them through that over the last 2 years. But you can see in our sign-up levels, they are kind of acknowledging today, like ever before, that they do need to do this. And when they start seeing some of the data around how this is a conquest move for them, it's a conquest move for the brand, and we are selling more cars in those markets that we launched, they're pretty quick on board once they start seeing that this really does help with making their SSI scores better as a brand, and it's helping them sell more cars at higher gross. Those are magic words, and once all that starts coming into the case study for them to see, they start buying in more every day. But it's definitely not an easy walk in the park at first. But it's definitely something I think we've been very happy that we've leaned forward, and we've really encouraged as a team to do for our customer.
Great. Dean, I have a quick question. I saw the TV spot, obviously, but I was just wondering what kind of media is driving installs right now for the Shopper Assurance program?
Yes. One of our tips to get the dealers on board a lot is we are scheduled to do a Tier 1 advertising campaign in the second half. And that's definitely got them more like, oh, wait a minute. But in the meantime, we're doing in these markets where the Tier 2 market is fully engaged, we're running spots like you just saw. But we're also, I've reminded our retailers, last year we did probably 100 million VDPs across the network, and that messaging is on every VDP, it's on every dealer website homepage, it's on our homepage at Hyundai.com. We're passing millions of people across those transom every day. So it doesn't necessarily need an advertising campaign to let everybody know, but we've definitely put those assets on all of our websites now, and we're seeing more engagements, we're seeing more leads, we're seeing more phone calls based off of before and after. So we're really already getting the message out, but we're getting ready to step on the gas a little more all the time. So that becomes a main message for us all the way at Tier 1 eventually.
Okay. And, oh, sorry, there's a question. Go ahead. You asked that question.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. How you doing, Dean? My name is Christopher Vegas. So actually I have two questions, but I'm going to ask the one first. So regarding the price transparency, how is Hyundai overcoming the need for the consumer to still feel like they have to haggle when they go into the dealership? Right, that's part of the car buying culture, right?
Yeah.
So if I don't haggle with you, I feel like I'm not getting a fair deal. So how are you guys overcoming that?
Yes, and we did a lot of study around that, about this real integral or a variance around one price and disclosing a target transaction price. Because we recognize there's two groups of people. There's one that I don't want to have to negotiate. Can you just tell me what the fair price is and I'm good? But sometimes consumers are making their own problems here because they still want to negotiate even when it's like, oh, that low transaction price. The point is when you can then lead them back to say, here's what the average transaction price is in the market, and if you don't believe us, why don't you use third-party validation like a true car? And then once they see they don't have the $4,000 guidepost anymore before an MSRP and invoice, but they only got this what is maybe $100 up or $100, we're still telling our dealers if they want to throw in floor mats, if you still need to go down a few hundred or you need to bump the trade a few hundred, but now you're only talking hundreds, not thousands, and that really reduces a lot of anxiety. So we're still leaning in to say we need consumers to be able to negotiate because there's a big group that do, but now the negotiation, let's say stress, is at a lot lower level in most cases. Or there's a lot of consumers that don't want to negotiate, and now that they know that price is already pretty fair, it's even better and there's no negotiation and they're off to the test drive.
Cool, and then just the second question, in regards to the shopper assurance program, I definitely admire your efforts to be able to kind of like modernize the car buying process. Are you guys also looking at doing like a subscription-based car service to be able to target that other group of consumers that maybe don't have the resources to be able to get financing or
Yes, great question there too. There's two things to that. There's two exercises in our definitions of subscription. Subscription definition 1, and we did this with Ioniq Plus last year when we launched our Ioniq, where we, for a fixed rate of, I think it was $259 a month, it was all included. The electricity to run the car, the charger, all of the stuff was included in the one price. And so that was our first foray into packaging in a little different way in a subscription level. Then there's the other subscription definition, which is you pay one price, you buy a sedan, but you have a sport utility to use on the weekend. We're going into that program too. We haven't launched anything at this time, but we're getting ready to this year because we understand that seems to be something that consumers want. We have an opinion, which is we think this is probably going to work a little bit better for a luxury customer than it will for a mainstream customer at the end of the day because the financial metrics, let's just say, work better when you're spending $1,200 for a Cadillac Escalade and get a sedan versus going in and trying to do a $399 or a $299 sedan and expecting to drive a $45,000 Santa Fe. So to make that model work is a little more difficult. It works for the consumer. It's just hard for us to make money around that. And so we're really trying to, for example, utilize our service loaner program. You know, we have thousands and thousands of service loaners sitting around at our stores. Why aren't we utilizing that pool to leverage a more robust subscription service? So we're definitely looking at it because obviously we're a mainstream brand. We're dedicated and watching to see how much uptick this gets with consumers. And if there is a lot of uptick in consumers, we're ready to strike with our own program.
Oh, take one more question. There you go. Just tell us who you are.
Hi, Walter Mullen with Ergo Interactive. What's the specific customer journey for shopper assurance? Does someone have to register? And then how do you proactively move them through the shopper assurance life cycle, as it were?
Yes, you know, I will be the first to say it's not the perfect experience yet. You know, we have two relationships, one with CDK and another one with Dealer.com as our website provider at the tier 3 level. And we've had the dealers install their two e-commerce layers, I like to call it, which is, I think, Connected Store with CDK and digital retailing with the DDC platform. That allows you to do a lot of that functionality I was talking about before, and it allows you to say, okay, I've got all my prepackaged stuff, save. Then when you go into the store, you can have them pull up your file, and so when you get into the store, they can see everything you've done, and we encourage our salespeople not to start from, hey, fill out this credit app and I'll go get some keys. We start with, what have you already entered into the system? We look at that point, what they've already done, and pick up the dialogue from that point. So we're doing a little bit of, we recognize it's not full transaction yet, and that's a good point that I'd like to differentiate here. You know, I think we're fixated a little too much on the online transaction only, and not enough about what about the 95% of the people that don't do it online. They need a better experience leveraging technology. And we have an opinion here. We want our dealers to continue to be the center of the universe by being the best salespeople, not pulling it out of the dealership and trying to do it all online. And so we're trying to leverage technology enough there so there is enough streamlined omni-channel connectivity, but we're not just trying to get to the online, you don't have to come to the store, we deliver and signing transactions. Because we recognize the state laws aren't all set up for that to really happen yet. Some states don't even allow that. Some states you have to be at the physical store. That's the way the law is. And so we recognize online transactions are important, but more importantly, let's just leverage this technology to streamline the current process and make that better.
Okay. All right, Dean, thank you. That was a great way to open the show today. Thanks very much.